The meeting in the Oval Office last night was supposed to be a sort of routine diplomatic engagement, one in which Starmer intended to shore up support for Ukraine in the wake of Trump's recalibrated foreign policy. Instead, the meeting took a slightly heated turn when Vance directly challenged Starmer over the state of free speech in the UK. And the exchange that followed was a rare moment of transatlantic tension, one that underscores the shifting ideological currents on both sides of the Atlantic. Vice President Vance, never one to mince words, has reprised the criticism that he launched at the Munich Security Conference. His argument was simple, yet fiery, that European governments, including Britain's, were retreating from their core values using the guise of misinformation or disinformation to silence dissent. And Vance paints a stark picture of Orwellian overreach, pointing to the arrest of individuals for speech crimes, including a British Army veteran convicted for silently praying outside an abortion clinic. His concern, however, was not merely philosophical. He framed the issue as one that affected American technology companies, suggesting that the UK's regulatory approach to speech was a form of extraterritorial censorship impacting US citizens abroad and impacting businesses. And it was classic Trumpian. It was a classic Trumpian thing, a classic Trumpian argument, the idea that European-style bureaucracy was infringing on American freedoms and commercial interests. And seated just feet away, Starmer wasted no time in pushing back. In clipped but firm tones, he defended Britain's record. We've had free speech for a very, very long time in the United Kingdom, and it will last a very, very long time. And this was not just a statement of national pride, but a careful assertion of sovereignty. Britain, he implied, didn't need lectures on democratic freedoms and democratic traditions, least of all from a United States where book bans, corporate speech suppression, and state-level crackdowns on protest are rife. And Starmer also attempted to disarm Vance's charge of regulatory overreach, reassuring him that the UK doesn't and wouldn't attempt to regulate US citizens or businesses. Yet the exchange lays bare a deeper ideological divide. For Starmer, the British approach to free speech is about balance between liberty and responsibility, between rights and the harm principle. For Vance, it's about an absolutist conception of speech, one that resists any government oversight. But we don't have that sort of amendment in Britain. We don't have a written constitution anyway. What made the moment so significant was not just the content of the dispute, but the broader political realignments that it reveals. The UK has historically found itself politically closer to democratic administrations in Washington, particularly in the post-war era. Yet under Starmer, one might have expected a more natural ideological alignment with the Trump administration's protectionist instincts, particularly on economic matters. Instead, this clash suggests that even where diplomatic cooperation persists, ideological fault lines are deepening, and Vance's intervention was not just an expression of personal belief, but a reflection of the broader shift within the Republican Party, a move towards a culture war-driven foreign policy. It was also a warning shot. The Trump administration, with figures like Elon Musk weighing in on the UK's regulatory approach, is keen to exert influence over how Europe handles digital freedom. And all of this unfolds against the backdrop of Starmer's urgent mission to secure reassurances from Trump on continued US support for Ukraine. And Trump's stance on Ukraine remains ambiguous. His administration has signalled openness to settlement with Russia, while also pressing European nations to shoulder more of the financial and military burden. And in fact, this morning on Turkish TV, there was a big thing about newspaper coverage suggesting that Trump was actually a Russian spy. I think it was drawing on Irish newspaper headlines. But Starmer's trip was a delicate diplomatic balancing act, not least because it followed a similar visit by President Macron. Both European leaders have been trying to gauge just how much Trump intends to shift the transatlantic consensus on security. And that context made Vance's remarks even more charged. They hinted at a US administration increasingly sceptical of its European allies, not just on policy, but on fundamental values. And Adding a further layer to the visit was Starmer's delivery of a letter from King Charles III, formally inviting Trump for a second state visit. That's unparalleled. The symbolism here is potent. A post-Brexit Britain eager to maintain its special relationship, extending an olive branch even as ideological rifts widen. And Trump's warm reception of the invitation, describing Charles as a great, great gentleman, suggested that personal diplomacy may continue to smooth relations where political disagreements arise. And the Starmer-Vance clash was more than just an awkward moment. It was emblematic of the broader recalibration of the US-UK relations in the Trump era. But it reveals an America increasingly sceptical of European political norms and a Britain determined to assert its own sovereignty while still keeping Washington close. And that keeping Washington close is about the state visit, as the world, which may take place so that Trump can spend time in Balmoral. So the unfolding dynamics between Washington, London, and Brussels make one thing very clear: the transatlantic relationship remains vital to us all, but it's no longer frictionless. Whether Starmer's visit ultimately secures the commitments that he wants remains to be seen, but one thing is certain: Britain's engagement with a second Trump administration will be anything but business as usual.